Or, you need to choose your future. You're thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do with my life? The pressure on as if you have to have your life sorted out at such a young age. I really, really feel like that just limits so much of our potential. Understanding yourself and understanding your identity, that's why it really drives me. Even when I was doing a course with Ali Abdal, it's like you niche down to blow up. So choose a specific niche, get really good at that, and then at some point you can start to do whatever you want. Due to the stuff that I do on social media, it creates a lot of work outside of work. And really my 9 to 5 creates my 5 to 9. I had just come out of like the whirlwind of my life in terms of personal development. Within 6 months, I had completely transformed my mindset. Some of these things that I've learned, some of these things that I now know, I would love to pass on.
Welcome to the Mindful and Driven podcast, where we help you to not lose sight of what's really important whilst chasing your dreams. Today's guest is Mo T, also known as Motivate. He's an airport engineer at Heathrow Airport and also a star on TikTok with nearly 200,000 followers. All of his videos are about the little interesting facts about airports that you wished you knew, but you didn't know where to find out. On the back of this, he's done many talks, especially in schools, because what he wants to do is inspire children to believe whatever their dreams are, that they're possible. I really enjoyed today's discussion, and I'm sure you are too. Let's get to the show. Welcome to Mindful and Driven, Mo. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here, actually.
It was really great to meet you the other week. I've only met you, was it last weekend?
Literally,
so we've got mutual friends through Hassan, and we had lunch together. And I heard a bit about your story, and I really loved it, so I wanted to get you on.
Thank you.
But to start off with, I'd love if you could tell the audience what's one common piece of advice that you really disagree with.
So one piece of advice that I really bothers me is when you're 17, 18 and you're in college and the careers teachers are all sitting there around you going, oh, you need to choose your future. And this poor 17-year-old, I mean, everyone was there one day and you're thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do with my life? And it puts the pressure on as if you have to have your life sorted out at such a young age. I really, really feel like that just limits so much of our potential, because at the age of 17, we really don't know who we are. We don't know what our interests are. We've probably just gone with the flow and followed the crowd for most of our life. And here we are getting put on a spot where they're like, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? So it's less of a piece of advice, but more of a situation that I feel like our society has created, which really doesn't help anyone fulfill their life purpose, because a lot of people just sign up for something that they're not really passionate about, but they do it because kind of everyone else is doing it, and they feel like they're locked into that forever. That's one of my bugbears when it comes to sort of careers and for young people choosing their careers.
When did you decide to become an airport engineer? Was that something you always wanted to do? When did you have the idea that like this is something I'm really interested in?
So, I mean, literally, honestly, when I was 16, I wanted to be a lawyer. I actually wanted to be a lawyer. It was nothing to do with airport engineering. It was nothing to do with aviation. I knew I liked that sort of stuff, but I had never experienced anything, right? I was just stuck in the school system my whole time. The first experience I ever got was when you're in year 11 and they let you go do 2 weeks of work experience. And I joined the law firm and I realized absolutely hell no, I'm not being a lawyer. No matter if you kill me, I'm not being a lawyer. But then after that, I remember speaking to my brother-in-law, and just by chance, my brother-in-law was an auditor for the government at the time, and he was auditing an aerospace company up in Cambridge called Marshall Aerospace, and he spoke to the CEO and told him, my brother-in-law, he kind of is dabbling with the idea of being an engineer. He likes aviation. Do you mind giving him a tour of the facilities? And that's when I got like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to get an entire tour of the facility of this place where they can literally design, build, and fly an airplane all from one spot. And I remember walking into that place thinking, oh my God, like I need to be part of the aviation industry because this stuff is just amazing.
Have you ever regretted that?
No, not at all. I love it. Honestly, I love it. Like aviation is one of those things that like once it gets in your blood, you just genuinely enjoy it. And the buzz of it, it's a very cliche thing. Not all 2 days are the same, but at the airport, like my job is so varied. I get involved in so many different things, so many different projects. There's no reason for me to regret it one bit, and it's created a life that I've genuinely enjoyed.
I think it really comes across in your content as well, because when you think about it, when I heard like what you do and how big it's grown, you initially think, oh, that's a kind of a strange thing to so many people to be interested in. But then when you watch it, you just realize how much you like what you're doing.
Mm.
And I think that's what draws people in, right? Obviously, you've got the interesting facts, you've got the different bits of pieces of information that people like. But I think it's because you're saying it. If it was just somebody else who was like recalling the facts or reading from a script, where you can tell like you're really excited to tell people it. And I think that's what really makes it engaging, is what has built you such a big audience.
I think that's with all things in life. I mean, think about when you were growing up and you were in school and you had that one teacher who was ecstatic by their subject. It's contagious. Like energy is genuinely contagious. There's also a TikTok guy who he literally just he goes around chasing trains around the UK all day. It's called Francis. I'm not sure if you've seen his content, but literally this guy has grown to like millions and millions of views. And all he has this like head cam that he just straps onto his head, and then he just goes around and he's train spotting. And he's like, "This is the class 4273, and it's gonna go fast." And he's so excited by it. And even though I don't care about trains, I just love watching somebody be passionate about what they do. And I think that's a common sort of trait just in all of us human beings. We like to see people being happy. We like to see people enjoying themselves. We like to see people doing the things that they love. Maybe it's a part of us like that wants to be fulfilled in the same way. That just craves that when you see it in other people. I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's one of the things I've always said. The people I like the most, it's not necessarily what they've done or how successful they are. It's how excited they are when they talk about it. And you can just tell, I think, well, you can see I'm doing it now, right? My hands are getting all animated. And I think people naturally do that when they're enjoying a conversation. Whereas you ask some people, and it's frustrating. One of the things I see when I go to different events and stuff, and people ask you, "Oh, what do you do?" But I rather ask a question like, "What excites you? What
Mm.
makes you happy?"
Mm.
Because, like, let's say what I do like 10 million different things right now. But if I have to explain that to people, it's kind of a chore, right? And it's, oh, I do this, I do this, I do this, I do this. Whereas if someone says, oh, what are you working on that excites you? It's like, oh, like I've got this project. And then you start getting into the bit that's more engaging, right? And every conversation is more enjoyable if the person's talking about something that they like. And it's such an easy concept, but I just feel like so many people don't actually do that. They ask the more boring questions, the small talk questions, like, tell me about what makes you happy. Tell me what you love doing. And I'm going to come away like more fulfilled from that conversation than if we just talked about the facts or the figures or whatever like that.
You know what? That's something I'm going to take on board, because I think I've sort of got into the cycle of asking people, "What do you do?" And it's out of pure curiosity, but I think the result of it doesn't because a lot of people, the thing that they do, first of all, like you said, maybe there's more than one thing. And also, I think people default that to their day job, whereas in reality, maybe you don't really care about their day job, but actually you just wanted to know something about them. So maybe that question doesn't actually produce the results that you would want. Maybe I think you know what, this reminds me of I do a lot of facilitation for young people in events, and one of my favorite icebreakers isn't just tell me about yourself or go around the room and tell me about yourself, but it's actually tell me one thing that made you smile in the past week. So everyone goes around the room and they tell someone else one thing that made them smile last week. And actually you start to realize what makes people smile. Like one person will be like, "Oh, you know what? I was watching the sunset and I was really happy." The other person will be like, "Oh, I had this really good coffee." And then you know straight away this person enjoys nature, this person enjoys a good sunset. Someone is just like, "Oh, you know what? I was with my child," and you know, and then straight away you know that they're a father or a mother. It's a lot more telling of someone when they're speaking about something they enjoy. And then compound that with the fact that they will come with the energy. It just makes it all so much better.
I think there's a judgment as well that comes with it, right? It's when you ask somebody what they do, in a way, they feel like they're being judged about what their status is. Are they going to be impressive to the person they're talking to? Whereas if you just want something that you enjoy, it's a different conversation. It's more level, right? Everybody enjoys different things. And I think it's really interesting to find out what other people enjoy, even if I might not be interested myself. Sometimes when somebody's really interested in something, even if I didn't care about it at all before, then suddenly I'm interested in it. For example, with planes, right? I didn't particularly care about plane facts, but then I ended up binging your TikTok because it was just interesting the way you were saying it. But even though you do something that you love, have you found like during this process times where your energy has been low, where you felt like there was too much going on? And how did you fix that? How did you manage to get yourself back on track again?
I think that's something that when you do what you love, you will always find yourself in a situation where you say yes to more things than you can physically do. Like my job at work is my job at work, and I love it, and I take on a lot there. But also, what happens is actually due to the stuff that I do on social media, it creates a lot of work outside of work. So the way I split it up in my head is the 9 to 5 and the 5 to 9. And really, my 9 to 5 creates my 5 to 9 in a weird way because they're so intertwined. But I've got to positions where, you know, 4 of the 5 days in a working week, I've got talks on every single evening. And I've got a full-time job where I'm taking on a lot as well. And then in the evenings, I'm packed out either doing a talk at a school or a university or a podcast or an event or something that I'm facilitating. And you get to a point where you just can't wait to sleep at night, and then you wake up the next morning and it's just go 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 go. And I really, those times are the most fulfilling, but also they really do drain you. I after facilitating an event, for example, if it's a big crowd and there's a lot of energy, I know most certainly usually, I go home with a massive migraine. Like that's kind of something that I've learned to just take on. Like I always have my paracetamol with me, and I'll take that. It's kind of just something that I'm expecting, but really, I'm doing something that I find very fulfilling in the process. Yeah, you get to a point where you're spinning a lot of plates and you end up dropping a lot of them. And that's unfortunate to say, but it's true. Like you try and spin as many plates as you can, but you have to realize that you're a human being at the end of the day. And some things are just genuinely not worth your mental health. Like if it's about dropping a project, or if it's about saying no to a certain thing, or just not engaging in a certain activity. I have been in situations where I've just had to simply say no to like a lot of opportunities that previously I would have jumped at. But I think to myself, I'm like, what am I going to do? Just like work myself to the ground? Like I need to be like, especially within the creative space, I think you and I both understand that your energy is finite. And actually, if you want to give something your full energy, you can't spread yourself too thin because the quality of your output will be impacted. And when you're in the creative field, you can't afford to drop the quality that much. What do you think?
Yeah, I've experienced the exact same thing where I don't think anybody actually knows every single thing that I do because I kind of forget myself a lot of the time. But there's obviously this podcast, the Entrepreneur's Handbook podcast, my writing, the ghostwriting I do for founders, the courses, I also find a lot of my time is actually spent in conversations, because one of my problems is, as you said, when you love what you do, it's very easy to let it accidentally kill you, right? If I'm talking to people all the time, I enjoy it, but then it's also quite tiring. And then I've also got to do the actual work at some point in the middle of that. And it's what I'm finding as I'm learning more about myself. So for me, it's been just under a year now since I quit my job at the time of recording this. And I'm learning what I enjoy more. I'm learning that sometimes things that you're good at aren't necessarily what you should do, because even though you might be able to deliver value, you might be able to charge high prices, the effect that has on everything else, it drains your energy so much that it makes you less effective at the other things you do. And it's hard to say no to money. It's hard to do that. But it's the right thing for me to do. And it must be the same for you with the different events you go to, where sometimes you think, oh, like if I get to this event, like I can get a new audience. This could be really great for the social media business I'm building. But at the same time, if you're tired before you go to an event because you've done 3 other events that week, you might not show yourself in the best way. And then it's actually like a diminishing return, because you go to that event maybe less energized. The people who hear you might not be as likely to actually follow you or to find out more about you. So taking that break could actually be better in the long run.
Yeah, I find it fascinating what you said, that just because you're good at something doesn't mean you should necessarily do it. Give me some more context around that.
Well, so my old job was technology consulting. I did that for 7 years. I knew pretty much any project I took on, I'd be able to achieve it and deliver the results. But that's not really what I wanted to do with my life. And it was difficult to make that decision to stop doing something I built 7 years of competency in, to do something completely differently now. And there was that identity struggle, right? Because as you all know, once you get praise for something, you like that. Everybody likes praise. Everybody likes to be complimented. And if you know that people are liking what you're doing, that can be addictive. You get hooked to the client feedback, to the feedback from your bosses, whoever it is. But in the long term, if that's not what you want to do, or that doesn't really interest you, then that's just keeping you like hooked in. Whereas actually you should think about, is another skill that maybe I need to work on. Maybe I need to start from scratch. But that skill is something which I really love, and I'm going to want to do that for a longer time. So there was a guy who I interviewed recently, Justin Welsh, and it's a similar story. He was leading companies to 50 million annual revenue, and he was good at that. But he had a panic attack. He was struggling. He couldn't, his whole health was suffering. So he started from the bottom as a creator, making absolutely nothing, and now he's making $1 million a year doing that too. So it's just, I think people need to have this belief that if you love something, you're going to work it out. You're going to be successful at it. And you sometimes need to let go of the things that you might already be good at to let yourself do that.
That's really, really powerful, but it's really, really hard. I think it becomes harder. I don't know what your personal situation is in terms of like family, and I don't know what John's was as well in terms of his situation in terms of like having dependency and having people that are required the income, and I think that's something that I really resonate with in terms of, I think Gary Vee I had once say where he's like, between 20 and 30 is the time where you take the most risks. And I think the reason why that's so powerful is because that's usually the time where you don't have kids yet. Maybe you're not in a relationship as of yet. And actually you're just on your own. And if you completely fall flat on your face, your parents will probably still have a room in their house that you can crash at. I mean, it's how old are you now, Marty?
30.
30, yeah. So I mean, you're still in that bracket of take risks. And I think you must have taken that risk just before you hit 30, innit? Tell me about that.
That was a conscious thing, right? I always told myself when I was at university, by the age of 30, that's when I'm going to get out and do my own thing, or I'm going to do something I really believe in. But I got dangerously close to not doing it. It was a pure fluke in the way that I did the creative stuff on the side, and that did well. But before that kind of started to take off, I was adjusting my time sets. I said, actually, I don't think I'm going to be able to make the change by 30 because I was so set in my ways. And even though the work can't right for me, it's very difficult to escape that. So you're obviously younger and you've got a lot more time to go before you get the same kind of stresses that you're talking about here. Are there any risks that you're looking at taking on at the moment?
Honestly, I think I'm playing it too conservative at the moment. I want to take more risks, but the thing is that I'm also trying to be strategic in the sense of leverage. The fact that my content and my job are so intertwined, it means that, let's say I do want to say I'm going to quit my job and do content creation full time. Well, then my USP that I use to make my content has just got hooked out the door because I haven't got access to the airport anymore. So that's something that, as much as I want to be like, you know what, I'm just going to, take the risk and go into content creation full time. And I think that's when I need to, over the next 5 years or over the next 4 years before I'm 30, is start to slowly transition my content to be more about, yes, what I love, but there's more than just airports that I love. I'm not just the guy who works at an airport. I love to educate. So while I'm at the airport, I'll educate about what's happening at the airport. But actually, I love to educate in all realms of life, and especially within the space of personal development, the space of mindfulness, understanding yourself and understanding your identity. That's why it really drives me, just helping people understand themselves more. And I really want to educate in that sphere. So, I mean, Hassan always tells me, and even when I was doing a course with Ali Abdal, it's you niche down to blow up. So choose a specific niche, get really good at that. And then at some point you can start to do whatever you want because you're big enough and people care about you, not just the planes. So for me, it's you know what, using my unfair advantage, what am I going to leverage the most at this point in time? Well, the airports are there. But then at some point, I don't need to talk about airports because actually I've built enough momentum that I can start to shape and mold the conversation to actually what really just punches out at me. I think that's when maybe more risk is acceptable. But I don't know. I'm really thinking about. I was literally thinking about this yesterday. I'm like, I don't feel like I'm taking enough risks. I want to take more risks, but I don't know where to start. Give me some ideas.
So one thing that I'm doing right now is quite a lot of my income will come from clients. So what I'm doing is cutting clients because the client money will support me, but it will take up my time away from what I want to do in my own brand. And it becomes like a job, right? Because it's good money, what I'm doing there. But that's a hamster wheel. It's going on the hamster wheel, producing for clients. That's not why I quit my job. I didn't quit my job to go onto another hamster wheel. I quit my job to create something that I believe in, that means something to me. Hi everyone, I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. I want to take a quick break to ask you to check in on yourself. There's many people struggling with balance, and there's nothing to be ashamed about. The tips that my guests and I share can hopefully help you along the way, but if you already feel overwhelmed or burnt out, it's probably best that you ask somebody for help too. For some, this might be a friend or family member, but others might feel like they have nobody they can talk to. If you're one of these people, check out the link in the show notes. It's for United for Global Mental Health. They've got helplines all across the world with people willing to listen on the other side. It's important to let somebody know how you're feeling. Now, back to the show. You said there about your motivation is to help people in the future, but why did you start the channel in the first place? What started TikTok? Was it a strategic decision? Was it you wanted to become a creator and influencer? Or was it just a bit of fun at the beginning? How much did you think about that right at the start? Was it just fun? What was the motivation?
So it's funny. There was this it went from first gear to second gear during its infancy, and it was before TikTok. It was actually on Instagram. I set up a page called Motivate because I had just come out of the whirlwind of my life in terms of personal development. Within 6 months, I had completely transformed my mindset, completely transformed who I saw when I looked in the mirror. And I mean that at a more deeper core level. I really transformed myself, and I thought, wow, some of these things that I've learned, some of these things that I now know, I would love to pass on. So I started a page on Instagram called Motivate, where I literally uploaded 3 things. One of them was a video of me sat up in the tree talking about sort of life goals. One of them was a little post, and 2 of them were literally a tweet or a post. And I just sat on that for a while. I didn't do anything with it. But I knew had this message I wanted to share. And it wasn't until I was sat one day with one of my friends called Haram Ilani, who I was actually staying with yesterday. And she was telling me, I was telling her about my job, and she could see the passion, because I loved it. I really enjoyed being in that space. She's like, why don't you share this? I'm like, really? I don't think anyone will care. She's like, no, just start sharing this stuff. So then I transformed that Motivate page. I deleted those 3 posts, and I just started putting airport stuff on there. But in my core, I still had this message that I wanted to share. So yes, I geared it towards the airport, but in the captions in the early days, back when Instagram was a photo first platform, now it's just videos. It's I used to write my heart out, but it was all personal development stuff. It was a picture of an airport, but the caption was all personal development. But over time, it sort of evolved to the point where actually I'm educating about airports. But I'm literally this morning, I was thinking about how am I going to make that transition back towards personal development. So right now, I'm very strategic with my page. I'm niching down to the point where I can get known for something, so that I can, I'm using it as a tool, as an avenue. And it really fills me with purpose when I do this stuff. But even in its infancy, it had the vision of, I want to use this to share a real message about personal development to help change people's lives.
So you asked for advice there. So obviously I've been through a similar transition at different points where I've niched down, I've gone broader, and now I have a couple of different brands. And what I'd say is that even how you're coming across in this interview right now is it's showing that you're passionate about the other things too. And you've got a following already. What I'd say is just once a week, or let's say do 80-20, right? Let's say 80% of your stuff is about airports. 1 video a week, or 1 video however often, is more personal development stuff. Test it out. See how that does. See how your audience reacts to it. Because obviously your audience is following you for one certain reason, but they're also following it because, like I said, it's because you're saying it. So what you want to do is test the waters. If those videos are performing way worse than the other ones, then okay, you're going to need to go back to the drawing board, think about it differently. But the only way you're going to find out is by experimenting. If you never test it, you're never going to know. And it's the same thing when I started writing. If I never wrote the first article, even though I thought it wasn't very good, I would never have known that I could go down the path I did. So that's what I really suggest. And even coming on this podcast, for example, this stuff was from right here. Some of the people listening today, they might have never heard of you before. They might not even know you did airports or whatever like that. But they're like, oh, I like the way this guy talks. So doing things like this, testing it out on your own page, you're going to start to build that audience and see what they like. And it might be a case of maybe your current audience doesn't like that stuff. And if that's the case, you've got that hard decision to make, whether it's in a year's time, 2 years' time, to be like, do I want to scrap what I've got now and create another brand to do what I really care about? Or am I going to focus on something which I love as well and just decide, okay, that's going to be something for the future? But I think at the moment, if you think like deep inside that's what you really want to do, then start testing, start experimenting, see what happens. Because you just don't know. Like, if you don't give your audience a chance to say whether or not they like the personal development side of things and listening to you talk about that, then you might have the assumption in your head, oh, this won't work. Oh, this will ruin my stats. Oh, this will do this. But you can't be sure until you test it.
Absolutely, and I actually really reassuring to hear that, because I have tested it and I have been applying more in the past, less in the current moment, that 80-20 rule, where I've been drip feeding sort of personal development stuff, and so far it's been going quite well in terms of the engagement, and people really resonate with that message. I guess what's happened more recently, I'd say in the past month and a half, is by niching down really hard, I've seen that my sort of the engagement has just spiked. Like, it went from like this to like this. I think I more than doubled my followers in like 3 weeks, because I was just making consistent aviation content. And I mean, I went from like 7,000 to like now 18,000 in literally a matter of a month. So seeing that, it makes you go think, oh wow, this stuff, this niche down to blow up thing really does work. And actually, you know what? Now that that's happened, and actually I can continue to do that, but that doesn't stop the once a week, or once in a while, drop in that tester, just to keep people remembering that I'm not just this. I'm not just airports. There's more to me than that. How have you found managing all these different branches now, like all these different other things that you do? How do you manage? How do you find it? How do you find managing that?
Oh, it's difficult. I think what happens with me is that I'm too curious, right? I enjoy too many different things. I've got a broad interest set, which doesn't necessarily make it easy for the audience. And there can be some people listening today who won't care at all about the Entrepreneur's Hammer brand or the podcast they do there, which is more about how to grow a massive business. And that's okay. Like, you can have different sides of your personality. And it's like what you're saying there. I could niche down further and just pick one of these brands, and I would grow faster. But I'm making the conscious decision of that. I enjoy this more. I enjoy having a bit of variety. And that's the kind of decision you make at different points. It's like, are you doing it for like growing as fast as you can? Or are you just, once you reach a certain point, is this for fun now? Am I doing this because I enjoy it? Or am I doing this to grow? And what's quite lucky about you and the two different branches you have is that you really believe in both of them. So even if you only did one of them, you could still be happy with that. You're not doing anything against your nature to grow, which is the best way to do it, right? If you see it online all the time, people giving advice about you need to do this to grow, you need to do that to grow, and it comes across as very inauthentic. Whereas what you're doing is leaning into one part of the thing that you really love, and that's doing really well for you. But it doesn't mean that other things off the table. And you've also got to decide, because what you could do is be the aviation guy for the next 5 years. And that's okay too. It's the internal conflict you've got, right? About you want to do the other stuff too. And working out like your underlying motivations is that, why do you want to do the other stuff as well? And if you really answer that question, like keep going down why, like wherever you answer that, why do you think that? And why do you think that? And maybe you can achieve many of the same things by focusing on the aviation brand, because you could be teaching people, you could still be helping people in different ways. And that might do really well. And you can still do the other stuff too. But maybe you reach a huge audience through your motivation brand, and that can bring you a lot of joy. So you're in a lucky position, right? Because I think whichever one you do, you're going to smash it. And that's a very lucky position. You can always it's being grateful for that, right? It's that I know whatever you do, it's going to work, because like just talking to you, seeing your excitement about what you're doing, that comes across. What really matters now is like, what do you want to do? Because you're going to be good at both of them. But that's the next question here I'm going to ask you, is that Where do you want this all to head eventually? Do you want this to be your full-time thing is teaching people through content? What's the ambition in terms of like your lifestyle that you want to have? Because some people, they want to just grow huge and like do you want to make where in 5 years time you're working all hours to get as much as you can get done and you build this massive empire? Or would you either do it so that you've got more balance in your life? What's the end goal for you?
This is something that actually part of my brain wants to answer in one way and another part of it wants to answer in another way. And what I mean by that is part of my brain knows that I want to absolutely like take this to the next level. So I'm gonna explain both of those, and then we'll see where the happy medium sits. So bear with me as I like embark on this like mental journey myself, like try and combine these things because I know it's been something I need to do for a while, but I find actually during conversations sometimes best is when I really start to come to like conclusions. So part of me wants to get to a point in my life where I've built a brand that's so powerful in the aviation space that every single time anyone around the world steps into an airport, the first thing that comes to mind is, "Oh, I remember seeing that on Mo's page," and I genuinely become the airport guy. Where no matter where you go, no matter what airport you step into in the world, somebody somewhere is thinking about something that I taught them about the airport. And the key of that is education. Like I want them to be educated about that because I think that one thing that I realized when I was in the airport is actually there's so many different careers that could be here, and you could be a doctor, but have the most exciting job as a doctor in the airport. You could be you could be an electrician and actually you're in this really dynamic fast-paced environment at an airport. No matter what you choose, you could be a writer and choose to be in the airport environment. Like every single career that you want to embark on, you can find the role within the airport environment, which is really exciting. So by educating people about airports, hopefully the funnel is that actually more people will start to realize that there's a potential career here. And I would love to have built like got to a point in my life where I've genuinely helped more people realize that actually they can get a job that they love at the airport as well. And by doing that, actually built that brand as the airport guy. And off the back of that, I would love to create a life where I'm traveling around the world, doing deals with airports globally, where I'm creating content for them and collaborating with them and signing deals where I'm actually become like the airport ambassador. It's like, take me to your airport, show me around, put me on the first class lounges, and let me see what I can teach people about this place. And actually, let me teach them. Like, I love to educate, but at the same time, I don't mind having a sponsored deal attached to the back of that. So that's sort of my vision goes, and I think actually that can branch out into multiple different parts of the aviation world as well. So everything from like even SpaceX and like wherever the aviation industry is going, Virgin Galactic, the space environment. I would love to really just mature in that space as like an influencer who just does what I love. I love this space, and I would love to be like a genuine like key person of influence within this space, especially connecting it to social media because I understand the power of that. So that's one branch of it. It's like I really want to build that to that point. Now, after becoming like an expert within the aviation space, I would love to then, after having become the airport guy, step off into actually how did Mo become the airport guy? Well, let me teach you the journey, the behind the scenes, the personal development that I needed to embark on to actually go on this journey. And let me explain to you the lessons that I learned on this journey and actually start to create that feedback loop of personal development to say, well, if you want to embark on a similar journey, here's the little, perspective that I can share that maybe can help you on that as well. And I would love to then branch off into like a motivational speaking career off the back of that. And that's something that I would love to do. So you travel the world, sell out stadiums. My goal is to sell out Wembley Stadium. I live in Wembley. I see Wembley Stadium right now. I'm looking at it from my window. I would love to sell out Wembley Stadium, 90,000 seats, sold out. And it's just all about personal development. That's sort of my long-term vision. Become a speaker and just speak for a living. That's something that I genuinely enjoy. So that's one side of my crazy life that I want to create. On the other side, I know that I'm going to have a wife and kids, and I'm going to have to like probably settle down. I'm not going to be able to like go and like travel this stuff if I have like, a 5-year-old son or a daughter or, wife and family and commitments and all those things, which are beautiful and they're also very meaningful and they're amazing. but I am stuck in between these two things. I would love to have a family and like a nice chilled family life, but I also want to become this crazy like travel around the world, sponsored deals, motivational speaker type.
Obviously, like your degree wasn't really in that kind of area. How did you grow the confidence to do what you're doing now, to speak so confidently in front of camera? Was it natural? Have you always been this way?
No, I was not. I was one of the most shy, insecure kids you'll ever meet. Very, very shy, very insecure. But I think they got to a point where the day I started to learn about personal development and I started to value myself is the day everything changed. Like everything changed when I started to understand the value I had within. And there was a few moments of positive confirmation of that message that really changed it for me. And it was literally like, I remember, I think it was 5 or 6 years ago, I was sat in actually it was about 5 years ago. I remember I was sat in a shisha cafe with my mates. And I had just read this really powerful personal development book. And I was just explaining to them the concepts that I had learned in this book. And I'll never forget this, for 45 minutes straight, all my mates were just sat there listening. 45 minutes. And I was just flowing, like I was in my flow state fully, just explaining these concepts and connecting them to real life and how like they've just helped me so much. And all of them were just there like, and by the end of it, one of them was like, bro, you've just articulated everything I've wanted to say in my life but never been able to. You need to be a motivational speaker. And I was like, what? Me? Motivation? Nah. I'm studying aerospace engineering. Like, I'm just going to get an engineering job. What are you talking about? Exactly a week later, I was in a restaurant with my friends. And the same thing happened. Where actually he was telling me about a situation they had in his life. And I was just transferring something that I had learned. And the same thing, he was like, bro, you need to be a motivational speaker. That was really good. I was like, what do you mean? Like, what? I don't. That's not me. And then I was like, you know what? After setting up the page and stuff, I was like, people are telling me that I have this ability to speak. I have two choices. I can either neglect it and let it die, or I start to invest in it and just see where that goes. And that's when I started to literally message these random universities and random schools around the country saying, I'm an engineer, I work at Heathrow Airport. Do you want to talk about engineering? And I was messaging like engineering societies. So they're like, yeah, please, when can you come? So then I get my foot in the door using the Heathrow sort of name to be able to actually speak to these students. So when I'm there, I'll talk to them about engineering, but I'll also talk to them about the importance of people skills. I'll talk to them the importance of mindset and attitude. I'll talk to them about all the softer skills that make you successful and not just the degree that you have. And I just started to get the reps in. Reps and reps and reps and reps. And I've done so many talks. I think last year, 2020, I've done 47 different talks in different places. This year I'm aiming for 52, but I'm just trying to get as many reps as I can in it. I remember the first ever talk that I'd done, I was stuttering, I was all over the place. I couldn't string a sentence together to save my life. The first ever public appearance that I'd done, but over time you kind of get used to it.
And you said there about how the lessons you taught your friends from your personal growth development journey. What's one mindset shift you think people listening today could make that would really make a positive difference to their lives?
One of the biggest ones that I like hit me like a truck when I was on this journey was I had never thought about the way that I think. You know, when you think, usually you simply think. You're just in. The way I describe it is, when you're playing a video game, like a shooting game, right? And you have two views that you could use. You can either do like a COD view, which is like Call of Duty, where you're looking down at the gun and you're in the eyes of the player, the first person view, or you can zoom out and it's something more like GTA or Fortnite, where you're watching the character run. The thing is that when we think, usually we're inside the bubble of thought. So whenever the moment of anger comes, it comes and we're immersed in it straight away. Whenever we think negatively and we tell ourselves we can't do that, we're immersed in it instantly. We don't take that moment where we can actually say, hold on a minute, step back. How am I thinking about this situation? So rather than just think about how you're thinking. And I remember the moment I took that step back, I was like, bloody hell, there are some situations in life that I am thinking about this in such a wrong way, where I'm just full of ego and full of like who I think I am, and the things that just don't serve me. And I realized that, oh my god, I can actually control the way that I think about things by influencing my own brain. What? Like, that's so crazy. And then wait, what happens when I do that? Well, the way that I think determines the way that I speak. The way that I speak determines my actions, and my actions determine my habits, and my habits determine my life. So literally, if I change the way that I think, I can change my life. But first, I have to do a stand back review of how I think to even start this whole process. And I remember when I realized that, I was like, wow. So to anyone who's listening at home, like, when was the last time you genuinely critically thought about the way that you think? And just know that the way you think will cascade into the way that you live your life. And if you do a stand back review on the way that you think, there's a potential chance that you can change everything.
I'm sure many people listening today are going to want to find out more about you and what you've been up to. And they're probably going to want to see your personal development flip as well in the future. So where should they go to find you? Where should they follow you?
So my handles are at Motivate. So my name is Moti, and it's Motivate. Or if you just write the airport guy as 3 separate words, so the airport guy, onto Instagram or TikTok or anywhere like that, you'll be able to find me on there.
So it's been great to talk to you today. The final question I ask everybody is, and it's similar to what you asked the school kids, what's one small thing that's brought you joy recently?
One small thing that's brought me joy recently, I think it was actually yesterday. I was sat in a restaurant and I was catching up with Hawra, and I was telling her about a message that I got on Instagram, and it was a message that I got from somebody who had watched my previous podcasts, a young boy called Asad, and he was telling me how he explained to me his situation and the way he found himself, and sort of the low that he found himself in at one point in his life. And then he told me that one day he reinstalled YouTube, and the first thing YouTube suggested was a podcast I had done about 2 years ago. And he watched that podcast, and he tells me that his life completely changed after watching that one podcast episode. And I remember reading his message, and he was telling me how drastically his life changed after the fact. And there was like tears like flowing down my face, man, when I was reading that. Like, I was just so humbled that a video on the internet of just me sharing perspectives could have an impact on someone's life so profound. And you can't not feel a real sense of ease and happiness when somebody tells you that they've been able to have a positive impact on their life. I think that's what we're all here on earth to do, is to serve, to give, to help others get to a better position in their own life. And the fact that I was able to do that on a small scale for one person makes me very happy.
If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, I'd love it if you could leave me a 5-star review. It really helps to get the message out further. Wherever you're listening, it would be awesome if you could subscribe and to share on your social media channels. If you want to see more of my work and advice, you can find all of the links in the show notes. Thank you again for listening, and I hope you have a lovely day.